Hi there. Today's First Chapter Friday is Enemies in the Orchard by Dana VanderLugt. And this is a story that's actually on our Golden Dome Award list in Vermont for this year. It's a novel in verse based on a true story about German prisoners of war that were brought over to the United States during World War II to kind of take the place of some of the American workers who had to go overseas, who were drafted to go fight or who volunteered to go fight in World War II. And they brought prisoners of war from Germany over to the United States to take their place. This was something that I did not know happened, actually. I had to look it up, and there were something like over 400,000 people were actually brought over as prisoners of war. There were these POW camps in every state in the United States except for three, Vermont being one of them that did not have one. But most other states in the United States had one. So if you are the kind of person who reads a book and like gets curious and has to look things up, I do recommend looking up more about this. It's an interesting piece of history that I think is not very well known. So I'm going to read you a little bit of Enemies in the Orchard. So this book starts with a dedication to Grandma, who always made room for another chair at her table. Every war is a war against children. Eglantine Jebb, founder of the Save the Children humanitarian aid organization, 1919. Claire DeBoer, Where I'm From, Appledorn, Michigan. I am from hand-me-downs, soft Macintosh apples simmered down to sauce, and crisp hard Cortlands eaten straight off the tree, from the cold wind wiggling its way into the second-story bedroom of our old farmhouse. I'm from the perfume of the lilac bush wandering into my window after a long winter, and the exhaust of Daddy's tractor puttering away from our barn. I'm from floors mopped on hands and knees, and silent treatments louder than screaming matches, from children should be seen and not heard, and young ladies don't act like that. From why do you always have your nose in a book? And idleness is a sin, and college isn't for families like ours, or girls like you. I'm from the Lord's Prayer still recited in Dutch, and pigs in a blanket, and pea soup, from hard wooden pews and 2 Sunday services, morning and night, from dinner prayers that repeat the same refrain. I'm from a mother born too soon, kept alive in her mama's kitchen stove, warmed by hope and coal through February's long dark nights, from the cold glass bottles of milk Daddy delivered before he was hired to run our orchard. I'm from 2 older siblings who prefer me out of their way, who remind me what I don't know, what I'll learn eventually. A sister already married and moved out, a brother enlisted, gone somewhere across the ocean, carrying a gun, pretending he's not afraid. I'm from the quiet whisper of another brother, one I never met, a baby born 14 months before me, lungs not strong enough to live through even one sunrise. The empty space where his life should be is a ghost, haunting Mama. His name marked on a grave in the local cemetery, but seldom said aloud. I'm from a one-room schoolhouse I outgrow a little more each day, from diaries kept hidden under my bed, and tender dreams that bloom like apple blossoms, soft flowers with the possibility of becoming fruit if they can find a place on the branch with space to grow where the sun can reach. Karl Hartmann, Wo ich komme, Where I'm From, Ulm, Germany. I am from smooth stones skipped in the river Danube, from Oma's lap where she read me fairy tales, from schnitzel, pork hammered thin and fried, in Muti's heavy black cast iron pan, when Vati was alive and working, and from weak stew, sauerkraut with meat scraps, lard, and broad beans when he wasn't. I'm from work before play, weeds plucked from the garden, wood chopped and hauled before I'm allowed to venture off on my bike. I'm from green forests and rolling hills, summer afternoons building forts, fishing, finding trouble, nighttime bonfires on riverbanks, my friends' faces lit by laughter and scoldings for tiptoeing home too late. I'm from eavesdropping on conversations in the bierhalle at my opa's elbows, from the songs we belt out loudly as we walked home hand in hand. I'm from the tall brick walls of the Ulmer Monster, a church that took 200 years to build, a steeple that my great-great-great-grandparents strained their necks to admire, gazing high into the sky. From rallies and parades through busy streets, the same cobblestone I walked 1,000 ordinary times, now filled to the brim with straight-legged saluting soldiers. From promises of the rise of our fatherland. I'm from Vati's stern mouth as he watched me at 10 years old fumble to button my new Hitlerjugend, Hitler Youth uniform. His nod as I slipped a swastika band around my arm. From promises 2 years later as he lay dying, diphtheria stealing his breath, to make him proud. I'm from Muti's worried eyes, scared whispers when she thinks I'm sleeping. From half-hearted jokes that at least with all these daughters she has fewer force to fight, fewer goodbyes to say. I'm from 3 younger sisters who resent my new role as the man of the house, ever on trial for their trust and respect. From being born first, but still caught in the middle, torn between honor and fear, conviction and doubt, still a boy, but expected to act like a man. I'm from Capture the Flag, slingshots aimed at squirrels, and pellet guns pointed at birds. Every toy and game and contest designed to test my courage and make certain I understand that protecting my people, protecting my family, protecting my country, protecting myself means winning at any cost. I'm from a world already arranged for me, a destiny already chosen, a life of doubting who I really am because I've only ever done just as I've been told. 250 German prisoners of war to be housed at Lakeview Camp. Midwest Gazette, May 19, 1944. Lakeview Camp, west of Allegan, Michigan, will be a German prisoner of war labor camp, according to word received this week by an A.D. Morley County agent. The camp has been conditioned for occupancy in preparation for 250 German prisoners who are expected to arrive in early September, along with an escort of 73 United States Army enlisted men and 5 officers. Barbed wire fencing has been erected around the compound that comprises most of the camp, and Army-issued rations have been stocked in a supply room. The camp's barracks have been cleaned and aired, and a mess hall has been made ready for service. The Army officers will be housed outside the compound. The prisoners are being brought in under terms with the Federal Emergency Farm Labor Agency and will be lent out to area farmers in groups of 6 men or more to assist with the fall harvest. Farmers are urged to use every American worker before requesting prisoners be sent out. Employers will pay the Department of Treasury the prevailing wage for services rendered, and from that POWs will be paid $80 cents a day, as well as given a small coupon redeemable at the camp's canteen. All prisoners will be guaranteed satisfactory and humane treatment as assured by the United States participation in the 1929 Geneva Convention. Claire, bumper crop, Monday, September 11th, 1944. I'm buttering toast and counting down the days until school starts again, when Daddy pushes his egg-stained plate away and leans back in his wooden chair until he's balancing on its rear legs, pulling on the straps of his denim overalls with one hand and finishing his black coffee with the other. When his cup is empty, he pops up, drops it in the kitchen sink where Mama stands, her hands in suds, her mind 1,000 miles away. It's been 6 months since my brother Danny left to fight. A year since my sister, Josie, married and moved out. The kitchen, the center of our house, feels hollow with just the 3 of us. The table, with chairs for 8, stretches long and empty in the morning sunlight. Daddy's sigh breaks the silence. Well, Claire Bug, I've got 1 son across the ocean fighting a war, 1 hired man, Pete, too old for war or climbing trees, 1 daughter married and gone, and you, 13 years old and still in school. You can help me with the math. We've got 200 acres of apple trees, plus 50-some acres of peaches, cherries, and plums, a bumper crop. That's 65,000 bushels of fruit for us to sell here at the farm or ship off. His eyes are tired. His usual optimism hangs by a thread. What's a farmer to do when he's got 0 responses to the help wanted sign posted out front and plenty of apples ripening up? You think extra prayers for 3 months of picking time before a cold hard freeze will be powerful enough to keep our profit from being left to rot in the trees? I give Daddy an, I don't know, shrug. Try to think of something worth the words, but he's already squeezed my shoulder, pulled on his muddy work boots, and headed out the door to the barn. Carl, Convoy, Monday, September 11th, 1944. I've counted 21 days swaying on the Atlantic, headed west to the United States. There are hundreds of us, soldiers of the Third Reich, now called POWs, prisoners of war, confined in this floating prison. During the nights, I sleep restlessly in a bunk reaching 6 men high, the weight of the man above me so heavy that even tossing and turning is impossible. I'm the youngest on the ship, brought up the ranks to fight because I can speak English. Being a good student earned me an early chance to die. Barbed wire is welded across the portholes, and nearly every half hour an alarm sounds, warning of submarines and air raids. Over and over we are lined up on the deck in life jackets, turning our eyes to the sky or staring into the endless water. The captain says the ship zigzags not to keep us sick and sorry, but to save us from ourselves. Our greatest danger is not the guns of the guards, who eye me suspiciously, or the storms sent by an angry god, but my own German brothers in submarines, aiming weapons straight at us, trying to bury us deep beneath the waves. I remember the Bible story I was told as a child about Jonah running away from God, running away from his enemies and getting swallowed up by a big fish, sitting for 3 days, scared, miserable, and praying in its hollow belly, then spit out onto dry land, given a chance to redeem himself. Claire, duty, Tuesday, September 12th, 1944. On the last day of summer vacation, I'm not meeting up with friends or shopping for new school clothes, but wiping sweat below my ponytail, sticky from the chore of cleaning the sales room till it's spick and span, ready to be stocked full of apples. It's too quiet. Last fall, Danny was here, working beside me, pointing out every mistake. Every bit of dust I missed, every corner with cobwebs I was too short to reach. Last fall, I would have done anything to get him out of my hair, to leave me alone, to work in peace. Pearl Harbor was bombed a month before he turned 16, and I prayed every day the war would end before he'd be old enough to join it. This past January, he turned 18. In February, he enlisted. The bitter winter morning he left feels as far away as he does. We all woke before dawn, a layer of fresh snow barely visible through the inky dark. Mama and I shivered beside each other in the kitchen, watching out the window as Daddy warmed up his truck, its exhaust sputtering and sending up puffs of clouds as he loaded Danny's bags. Still in my long nightdress, my bare feet were cold on the wooden farmhouse floor. Mama's voice and hands shook as she kept smoothing out the collar of Danny's army uniform, her hands reaching toward his face. She restrained herself, asking questions instead. Did you get enough to eat? Do you have the lunch I packed? Did you double-check your bags? I wasn't sure if I wanted to bar the door or stow away, if I was more worried or jealous. No one in my family has ever traveled farther than a few hours north, and Danny left across an ocean to go places so far away it still dizzies my mind. Goodbyes are awkward in a family where things are known but not said aloud if they don't have to be. Things like, I love you, or I'm sorry. That morning, we played the part of a good American family, and before Danny shut the door to leave, he reached for me, wrapped his arms around my back just long enough that I can still feel the scratch of his wool coat on my face. Be good, Claire Bear, he whispered. I stopped sweeping to wipe more sweat from my forehead, and still praying every day that this war will end, that Danny will be home by Christmas, that this will be the only fall we'll live without him. Carl, Ladung, Cargo, Tuesday, September 12th, 1944. The sun is just beginning to rise as I wake to shouts of "Land!" and clamber up the steps, crowd the ship deck, stand with my Kampfgruppe, my fighting group. We began as 55 men and boys. Today, 29 of us remain. Almost half were left behind, buried on a battlefield. We stick together. Tied by where we've been, what we've seen. In the morning mist, New York Harbor slowly takes shape on the horizon. Tall buildings standing whole, pointing heavenward. We glance at each other, squinting, surprised. Our German officers assured us these landmarks no longer existed, promised us the city was bombed to pieces, that like our home country, the United States was smoldering and suffering. I add this lie to the others I've already collected, unsure if it's seasickness or unsettling doubt that rots my belly. A cold wind of uncertainty propels our boat forward toward a glistening American city. Claire, resourceful, Tuesday, September 12th, 1944. Dropping an ear of half-eaten sweet corn on his plate, Daddy licks his buttery fingers and announces he's settled on a plan to get the apples picked. I pause mid-bite as he pulls a wrinkled newspaper clipping from his shirt pocket. This was published in May, he says, unfolding the paper, its weathered edges proof it has been studied several times over. He summarizes its contents, explains to us that a camp for captured Germans, prisoners of war, has been built just 15 miles away. The county's emergency farm labor office will lend us groups of men, just for the season, just while we're short of help, just until the war ends and boys like my brother are back home to work. Daddy talks fast, answering his own questions before we can ask them, like he may need the same convincing we do. Convoys of American Liberty ships make their way every week to Europe, loaded with supplies to fight the war. Why send those ships back empty? Why not fill them to the brim with captured German soldiers? Why not use those prisoners to replace all the Americans we've sent to fight in Europe? Why not put our enemies to work? How could we argue with common sense? Mama looks uncertain, shudders and shakes her head. Saul, are you sure this is safe? I object too. What will Danny say when he finds out the guys he's shooting at, the guys shooting at him, are hanging around our farm? Daddy answers with another question. What does President Roosevelt tell us? We all have to do our part. Victory begins at home. So if you're interested in historical fiction, stories based on true things that really happen, check out Enemies in the Orchard on the Golden Dome Award shelf in our library.